We are in for a big one when it comes to the OKC Thunder going against the Minnesota Timberwolves, man. This has been, quite honestly, one of my favorite playoff series that I've seen. Just in general, like the whole playoffs has just been kind of electric. Outside of like a few duds where, frankly, it's just teams getting hurt. Like, Minnesota going against Golden State where Stephen Curry gets hurt. Or you had Ja Morant and the Grizzlies where Ja Morant got hurt, but you could say that maybe the Grizzlies probably wouldn't win, even though Ja Morant says that he figured them out. Okay, well, whatever. But honestly, this has been a great playoffs just in general, and I love what I'm seeing. And right now, they have in the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference some of the best matchups I would love to see. But today, I'm going to talk about the OKC Thunder versus the Minnesota Timberwolves and everything that kind of comes with that, because this series is by and large a series between kind of like ideologies, clashing ideologies, but also more importantly, what both teams are actually kind of like strong in. And what I mean by that is that you have Anthony Edwards, who is, one of the best superstars or stars, however you want to say it, in the league right now, one of the best up-and-coming stars in the league. Young guy, great talent, has one of the best kind of like improvements from year to year that I've seen so far this in his career. And then you also have they're big. Hey everybody, real quick, I just wanted to say thank you for watching this video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We are on the way to 1,000 subscribers. And honestly, I wouldn't be doing this content without you guys and your guys' support, all the great comments that I see each and every single video. But we want to bring more people to the family, so hit that subscribe button and let's get back to the video. Their bigs are something that's definitely their strong point, which back in the day, when they traded for Rudy Gobert was actually a weakness, and it probably still is considered a weakness depending on who you're going against and the strength of Rudy Gobert in the paint. But you can say the same for OKC. OKC has two bigs in Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein, where both of them are kind of really good, but both in their own ways. Of course, Isaiah Hartenstein is more of a playmaker, and so bringing out whoever is going to be guarding him, I don't know who will be, because both are going to need to guard Isaiah Hartenstein a little bit more up. Not because Isaiah Hartenstein is like the greatest three-point shooter or anything like that, but because of the off-ball screens that Isaiah Hartenstein always gives to his guards, which gives them enough space to pull up in the mid-range. And so leaving that space a little bit up where Rudy Gobert has to play a little bit closer to the free throw line is definitely going to lead to a lot of backdoor cuts, a lot more freedom for a lot of the other guys. And so you're going to see a little bit like that. And then you also have Julius Randle going against Chet Holmgren, where Chet Holmgren is always going to be on the three-point line, catch and shoot type of big right there. But, the spacing on the floor is going to be a lot different, a lot better than the likes that, they played against, like, the Grizzlies or, the Warriors to a certain degree. And so you're going to have like a clashing of just like those two type of, archetypes. Which one is going to be better? And then, of course, you have to talk about, one of the MVP candidates, especially, if you're just looking at this playoffs in general, if he were to make it to the finals and win the finals. SGA is having, one of the best years you can have for like one of the, up-and-coming superstars in the league. Even though I still believe that Jokic is going to get in. I have to say that every single video. But I think that SGA, he's having a very similar to Anthony Edwards, is having a very kind of streaky playoff so far. He hasn't been the SGA we've known in the regular season. He's pretty much just been like on and off, but mostly off. And you can say the exact same thing for Anthony Edwards, despite the fact that he's showed up quite a bit in a few games. For the most part, he has been like kind of streaky and shooting kind of horribly and shooting less than like 40% from the field. And so Anthony Edwards is definitely going to be somebody to look at, but also SGA, because SGA has not been having the great playoff season as well. But there are a few people who I think that are going to take both of these teams kind of like up par, like at least to a higher degree, a higher echelon, and it really depends on these players. Of course, everybody else is going to do the best that they could, but these players can greatly elevate each team, and I think that this is very important to even point out. And if we're going to start with the Minnesota Timberwolves, it's definitely Naz Reid. Naz Reid is kind of like a big man. He's a stretch four, but he's actually like one of the most skilled like stretch fours you'll ever see, because he's just simply just like one of the most dynamic players. He can shoot really quick, and he actually has like a dribble move. Like he has dribble packages. Like this guy is actually pretty good. But one of the things that if you've been watching in just this playoffs is that Naz Reid hasn't been having like the best games. He's kind of like just been all right. He had like I think a pretty good game 3 against the Warriors, but outside of that, he's been pretty like kind of quiet. And if you're going to go against the Oklahoma City Thunder and how they have their two big system and also just a bunch of wings that are able to just hound on people, you're going to need players like Naz Reid to kind of like alleviate that pressure away from their guards, because Anthony Edwards is going to have a handful when it comes to the next other X factors that I think are going to be very, very important for the Oklahoma City Thunder's success, which is Alex Caruso and Lu Dort. Now, these two players are not necessarily like, you know, the people that you expect on offense to get a lot of points, but one of the great things that they do is that their defense makes scoring a lot more easier. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean that if they're going to get stops and actually play against, like, I think that they're going to have Alex Caruso match up against Julius Randle, because that kind of like makes a little bit more sense. They're going to kind of get a lot more stops, which just in turns, the turnovers, you just get easier points. And they're not actually bad shooters. Lu Dort is actually a pretty good shooter. Alex Caruso is actually a pretty good shooter. They're not somebody that you kind of like want to rely on to make shots consistently, but they are going to make shots at a pretty high clip and still be able to go back down on defense and get stops every single time. It also seems like that every time you watch the Oklahoma City Thunder, it's like there's people everywhere. They're such a good team when it comes to moving laterally, because I believe that they understand that, hey, listen, if we're going to stand like, you know, from sideline to sideline and stretch our arms, we actually got like pretty good coverage. You know, Shea has like almost like 6'11" reach, similar to Lu Dort, Jalen Williams, and Christian Wallace, and other players on that team. They actually have long reach. They're very long in that perspective, but they kind of like understand that. And so if they allow, like, you know, kind of similar to how I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to think about it too, if they allow their bigs to be shot blockers and in the paint, then their main thing for them is we have to take up space laterally, going side to side, going from the wing to the free throw line to the elbow, and so on and so forth. And you see that every single time. Like when they went against Denver in their last game, they were able to get so many turnovers based off the fact that they were just simply everywhere in the passing lanes, always helping for the baseline. I mean, just simply doing gangbusters work on the defensive end. And that really comes from the head honchos in Alex Caruso and Lu Dort, where they're the ones that's really spearheading this defense. And then you always have, like, you know, Shea being able to get a couple steals, Chet being able to get a couple steals and blocks, and Isaiah Hartenstein being there. And so this team is very, very, very loaded. And so it's very important for a lot of the role players on the Minnesota Timberwolves to have pretty good games, and that really starts with Naz Reid, especially since he's been quiet and he's going against people who, in terms of Alex Caruso and Lu Dort, have been having like a pretty great playoff series so far, and they're going to be hounding Anthony Edwards, and so you have to alleviate that pressure if you want to even be like somewhat competitive. But even with all that, like, this is the Wolves' biggest competition when it comes to this playoffs. You can talk about, you know, the fact that they went against the Lakers and LeBron James being hurt, or just the Lakers just in general always just seems to fall apart towards the end. Or you can talk about how they went against the Golden State Warriors, where they had, you know, their best player in Stephen Curry, who was basically the dynamite of that offense, get hurt within like a game. And so this is going to be their first time going against a team that is actually fully percent healthy, 100% focused. And we're going to have to see whether or not they're going to take the advantages that they had, the very few advantages, in my opinion, which is really, when I think about it, there's really not many advantages that they have, and make, you know, it to be a longer series and last pretty much towards a game 7, because outside of that, I don't see them winning the game in 5 in the same way that I do seeing Oklahoma City winning this series in game 5. And so, like I said before, this really comes down to not only just, like, you know, the role players and the wings and the guards, but it really comes down to, you know, their bigs and Anthony Edwards and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If Shai can have a very good and very consistent series of him scoring 32 without taking like 30 shots, well, then maybe they're going to take this team off the map within 5 games. But if he's not going to have a consistent game plan where he can make shots consistently and at a decent enough clip where he's not taking away shots from other players, well, then this series might go a little bit longer. And then same for Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is kind of like in the in-between zone, kind of very similar to how James Harden played in the Houston Rockets, not in terms of actual like how they size up in their moves or whatever, but it's basically, he can get into the mid-range, and he has more of a mid-range than Houston James Harden, but it's either three or layup. And for the most part, that's the system that can work. And of course, because he's the best player, he has the liberty to shoot in the mid-range. But he needs to be able to kind of like derive more value from that mid-range if he wants his team to succeed, especially since the fact that he's been very inconsistent shooting the 3 ball. And you don't want to have Anthony Edwards having games where he's shooting 0 for 7, 1 for 10, 1 for 11 that he's already had in this playoff so far. And so he needs to raise his level, like literally become like LeBron James, what was in like 2019 or 2018, where he was averaging like 30 something points, 9 rebounds, 10 assists or something like that. This is when he was basically all alone going against like the Monstars in the East and having to go against Golden State once again, just only for J.R. Smith to lose the first game for them. But that's his past. Let me get into the future. But Anthony Edwards needs to be better. He needs to play better, and he needs to show up, because this Oklahoma City Thunder team is no joke. Shai, even though he's not playing the best, the reason why they're still in this game or still in the playoffs is because his team is so loaded. They have scores everywhere. And these aren't like, the greatest scorers of all time, but these are people who are within their role, know how to get buckets and get baskets very easily and very efficiently than people have in the past. And so you're going to have to figure out, okay, cool, what can we do in order for us to get easy wins up and down the court, whether it be on offense or defense? Because in my opinion, I think this is Thunder in 5.